Hi, welcome to my channel, Frugal Living. I'm going to share the first part of an interview that I had with Khalil and AJ for Marriage Inside Out. They're going to give tips and tricks on how couples can communicate in the area of finances and money. What a great way to start the Valentine's Day weekend. I hope you enjoy. Stay tuned. Tell us a little bit about yourselves. How did you get started in this debt-free journey? Because everybody's not on this journey. So how did you get there?
Yes. Well, first of all, Francesca, thanks for again for having us on. And again, I'm Khalil. This is my wife. I call her Adrian. She goes by AJ, but I call her Adrian. And we live in Bradenton, Florida, on the Gulf Coast. Been married 5 years. Just celebrated 5 years of marriage, and I currently work as a research and development scientist for a food and beverage company.
Yeah, and I give ops for a professional development training firm. So we work with corporations, military, sport teams, and do leadership and communication training.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, we have a platform called Marriage Inside Out, where we're all about, teaching couples how to become mission focused and working together as a team. And in terms of our debt-free story, it's funny because we kind of have three of them, three parts of the journey. Yeah. But to start off, so when we first got married, I had accumulated quite a hefty amount of student loan debt, which is fairly common for a lot of young folks out there. So I had basically taken out student loans to pay for part of my bachelor's degrees and some of my and most of my master's degrees. And so by the time we got married, obviously interest had kicked in so much that it had gotten to $61,000. And so obviously when you first get married, that's not really what you're thinking about walking into, Right. But yeah, I mean, we had always, talked about even before we got married, just that's something that we want to pay off for sure. And we definitely wanted to do it.
Yeah, and he was super transparent earlier on when we started dating, because we dated for several years before we got engaged and married, about kind of where he was, to the extent that he was already focused on paying off his debt. I didn't even know that we would get married before he paid it off, because he was like, I'm going to pay off this debt. I can't step into marriage with this debt. So I didn't know if we were going to just, be dating for many years.
It was taking a while.
Because he was going to take on that load on his own. But it ended up being absolutely perfect, because as we stepped into marriage, it wasn't his debt anymore, it was ours. So we really started to discuss how we could tackle that together as a team. So
yeah, and it was once we were gifted early on in marriage, we were gifted Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace from one of her friends.
Yes.
And that really was kind of the springboard that got us, thinking like, okay, let's really start to be aggressive in this. Let's not waste any time, because up until that point, first few months, we were just making the minimum payments. But that really was, again, kind of the catalyst that really got us more motivated to just attack that.
Right.
And so kind of fast forward, we paid those off within a 2-year span, really. And then over the course of the past few years, we've each had to get new cars unexpectedly.
Yeah.
And so, using some of the same tactics that we use, obviously, when paying off that student loan debt, we just were aggressive in each of those, and we were able to pay off her car within 6 months.
Yeah,
and
6 months and yours in 4.
Mine in 4. Yeah. So.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Two parts of our journey. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That is awesome, especially being debt-free 3 times over, because I like what you said about the car, because that's the one thing that really, I always had a hard time with Dave Ramsey, because I'm like, if you have a broke down car that continually breaks down, he's like, just get an old car. And it's like, well, if it keeps breaking down and you're spending thousands of dollars, because we dealt with that. We ended up just going down to one car, but some can't do that, because my husband works where he can commute. So he does a lot of public transportation. So that's okay for us. But I always asked, what do you do when you legitimately need a vehicle and you don't have the $8,000 whatever dollars,
Yeah.
$8,000 to $10,000 to put down to get a reliable vehicle that you're not? Because sometimes if it's so old and broke down and you keep spending thousands of dollars, that's actually kind of defeating the purpose. So I love that. I love that you guys did that. I noticed that when a few months ago you guys were talking about how you paid off your car. So that's awesome. Now, the question you kind of briefly talked about it, but did you both have that debt-free mindset? Because you guys, and I'm sure you talk to a lot of couples, generally one is more of a spender and the other's a saver. Are you both kind of savers or on the same page, or kind of how did that kind of come together?
Yeah, I can start off. I think that we both definitely have been very investment minded and wealth building focused, if that makes sense. So we actually met when I was working full time and was interested in investing in a local property, and Khalil was a real estate agent at the time. So a friend connected us because they're like, oh my gosh, you have to meet this guy. So we kind of already had that in common, but I would say in many ways I was very naive to the magnitude that student loan debt affects people, because, you know, I was fortunate enough to have a full ride scholarship for athletics and for my bachelor's.
Oh, wow.
And I had maybe friends that were going through it, but it wasn't really discussed in the way you don't really reflect until that interest builds out on the impact that has. So when we started dating and I realized like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of debt. And how do you even start paying that back? I think that just shocked me into reality. But we were on the same page about wanting to go ahead and start chipping away at that before we, branched out too much in other areas of investments and things.
Right. And to add on to that, we, like she said, we both have been, I would say, just, kind of have really had the same mindset in terms of just striving to be good stewards of our finances. I mean, I think, I was one who grew up and my dad was always quoting Ben Franklin, to save and have is better than to spend and crave and all that. So, I guess if you were to categorize us so to speak, I would probably be more of the frugal on the frugal end. But we're not to either extreme, I would say. We certainly knew that, going into marriage, that we both, knowing just our purpose and our mission and what we wanted to do in life together, and raising our family and, building legacy, leaving, something that we can pass on to our children, our children's children. We knew for sure that, okay, if there's anything in the way of that, whether that's a debt, whether that's whatever it is, then, then out you got to go. Like, you
oh, that's great.
So we certainly had, some of those conversations going into marriage, and, continue to till this day. And, it's something that we enjoy the process. It definitely builds character and just, even greater teamwork between us. So it makes us closer. So.
That's awesome, because your mission is, your future. And that's really great. I think that as couples, that's important to have that same kind of goal and focus. And that's kind of what we did to buy our home. We had that focus because it was tempting, when he would get bonuses, we'd see our friends, they went on a trip to, Louisiana, whatever, New Orleans. We're like, okay, that would be nice to take a trip. We ended up just driving somewhere 2 hours away. We did a little family trip with some of it, but we saved the bulk of it because we didn't spend money on the tickets. But it can be tempting. But having that foundation between the two of you, you guys can kind of encourage each other, like, okay, let's keep focused. So that's awesome.
Right.
Yeah. Now, for couples, since you guys are all about marriage and couples, and I love that, what are your tips for couples who are interested in starting the debt-free journey but aren't really sure where to start? Because a lot of people, like you said, they have 60,000 whatever student loan debt, and I was dealing with that. And at first I was kind of like, I don't know. I just planned on, just dealing with it, and it's just going to be there. And my husband's like, well, this is $30,000. You're just going to deal with that? And I was like, guess so. It's like that. We need to pay that off. So for those that are kind of wanting to do it, but not sure where to start, where would you kind of give them some tips?
Yeah.
We want to start?
Yeah. I mean, I would really suggest that you guys start with your mission, kind of bringing that to the forefront. Like, what is the purpose of your marriage? What is your 5-year, 10-year goal? If you were able to just put forward a perfect marriage, what would that look like for you in terms of the impact that you desire to have as a couple? And if you're on the same page about that, then we can back into discussing specific areas that you desire to improve, and one is finance, right? So if you desire to have a house in a certain place and you have to get there somehow in 5 years, sacrifices are going to have to be made. It's easy to jump to try to fix the debt, and there's certain other pain points that a lot of people have that they haven't worked through yet. And it builds up a lot of resentment when it comes to finances, like you said, especially if you're on two opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of spender or more frugal. So once you know your mission, then you can step in and start to set some realistic goals. For us, we do quarterly goal setting. That's really what's worked well for us, to make sure that we get on the same page and we set financial goals, but we also set goals in our faith and our personal development in that area, in our fitness, which includes nutrition and physical fitness, and then also in our firm, which is like Marriage Inside Out, and how we want to grow a legacy for our family. So that's kind of our initial suggestion, would be get on the same page about your mission, then you can get to the goal setting process.
Yeah. And to add to that, I mean, I think also as you talk about, your mission, obviously you have to have a mutual desire to do it, right? Like that's one of the key things. Like it can't just be, one of you wants to go into tackling this. Like, no, it's, two are better than one before they help each other succeed. Like you're meant to attack this as a team. And so I think just that mutual desire is certainly one of the first, one of the key factors. And then as Adrian was saying, from there, it's creating a strategy. And so determining what strategy works for you and your spouse, knowing that your story is not like anyone else's story. Like it's easy for us, especially in the social media era, we can compare our lives and what everyone else has done, their journey, our journey to everyone else. Or, so we see a couple that, you see the stories like they paid off $120,000 of debt in 6 months. And it's like, how in the world did they do that? But when we look at that and it gets into our heads of like, oh, wow, like, well, what am I doing? But it's like, no, like your journey is your journey. If it takes someone 5 minutes to run a mile, good for them. If it takes you 10 minutes, good for you. If it takes you 15, like it doesn't matter. Your story is your story. And so one of the things that we talked about is, it's really gauging when it comes to sacrifice, what types of sacrifices are meaningful and also doable and feasible for you. Some people, obviously, they might choose to, just really go all in and just eat ramen noodles and beans for, however so long. But for some people that doesn't really work for them. I know for us, we wanted to, like, yes, we were aggressive in paying off our debts, but we also wanted to go on a vacation here or there, or if we want to go out to eat a few times.
To not feel guilty for that. Yeah,
exactly. So one of the things that I would want people to know is that, you can still aggressively pay off your debts and still enjoy life within boundaries, obviously. So.
Oh, I love that, because sometimes I look at it and people are just like, oh, we never go out, we never do anything. And it's kind of like, especially when you have kids, it's like that does get boring after a while. We like to take them for a vacation and maybe, we just drove to the beach, and it's, you need that. You need that time as a family to do things. So sometimes when you remove it, it's almost like teaching the next generation. Saving money is boring. You don't get to do anything fun. You eat beans and rice and, Jesus Christ all the time type of thing. And that's it. And it's like, this is not something. And I think that's the way I initially came at it. And my teenagers pick that up. It's like, oh, well, saving money is boring. I can't do anything. I can't get anything, can't get the nice shoes, can't get the outfits and stuff. Yeah. So now I've kind of, over the years, learned how to kind of with my husband's help, put that more in balance, because he's better at enjoying life. I'm like, I'll just eat, the same stuff all the time. Yeah. But it is nicer to be able to go out and do things. So I love that.
Absolutely.
You talked about it, and we'll probably add on to it a little bit. But if one person is a spender and the other is a saver, how can they come to a meeting of the minds? So, and sometimes that people are at the other end of the spectrum. Maybe they're, they say opposites attract. Some person may like, oh, I'm the saver, so I kind of like that the spender can enjoy things, but when they get married, it's like, okay, well, now I'm not happy with this spending, or I'm not happy with the situation. And I know a lot of people I've heard, I personally don't do this, never have, but of the hiding, the spenders like to, hide, oh, let me hide the bags. I remember a family member, I won't say who, but would hide the bags, oh, let's hide the bags. Don't bring them out, whatever. And it's like, okay, how do we kind of come to a meeting of the minds and kind of get away from all those little games and type of things?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good question. I would say first, it starts with just a mindset shift in terms of how we look at someone who's more of a spender versus someone who's more of a saver, right? So oftentimes we look at either as an issue in some regard, like, oh, the spender is just always spending, or the saver is just always saving. But really, I think we can look at both qualities as strengths. Now, obviously, if you use either to an extreme, it can have, obviously some detrimental effects or cause some distress. If you're an extreme saver, obviously, as we talked about, no one wants to be around that. As well as you're an extreme spender, you obviously ain't gonna have much left to spend, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's seeing both as complements of one another. So I would say for Adrian and I, like kind of like I mentioned, I would be considered more of the frugal person, but she helps me in making sure, kind of like you said with your husband, making sure that we are enjoying life and doing things that are nice to do every now and then.
Yeah. And really thinking about that opportunity cost. So I think it's first of all just letting go of that pride in your position, right? So in many regards, for those of us that like nice things, right? You like your nice things, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, what are you willing to give up to get on the same page as your spouse and to continue to look forward towards your goals? I definitely like nice things. And there was a time in my life where I could get things and not have to answer to anyone about whether I was getting them or not, right?
That's before marriage.
Exactly. But I was not willing to hold on to that as a divisive, matter between us. And we've set realistic expectations. So like for us, any purchase over $100, we always discuss, period.
Say really any purchase.
Yeah, really any purchase, period. But initially our threshold was 100 to make sure that there wasn't any superfluous spending at any particular stores or anything, to just make sure we were communicating about and being honest, which is what you were saying, Francesca. Like we had to open up the door to that transparency, and then that allowed us to be able to discuss, like, is this a must-have? Is this something we literally need? Is it in the budget right now? Is this a want, but in our miscellaneous area of the budget, could we get it? And then is it just something that is like a splurge? And those are kind of our three main categories that we break down and discuss with each other. If it's a need, if it's a certain grocery item or something that we need, we don't even have to discuss it. But outside of that, we try to make sure we always sit down and discuss or call, talk through it.
Yeah, and also, and within all of that, it's realizing that again, we're a team, and we're responsible for being good stewards of our resources. It's not like this is my money or this is hers. Like, no, it's realizing that, we're all striving to win. We're both striving to win, so if, like, for example, our money is our money. So if I'm making a certain amount of income, it's ours. If she's making a certain amount of income, it's ours. We really strive to really see everything within that stewardship and just kind of collect a team mindset when it comes to resources. So that helps.
Wow, I love that, because I think sometimes it's like villainizing one party, you know, the other ones. So I love what you said about pride, you know, because it's like pride in your position. Well, I like to have nice things, and I should. I work hard. Why shouldn't I have it? And the spender or the saver is like, you know, well, you're just wasting. You're just wasteful, you know, and that has an argument. So I love that, coming to see the strengths in both of those areas. And what are some practical tips for communication? So now we've gotten from, okay, we've set the goals, we have our mission, you know, but how do we get to that conversation? Because sometimes, especially if there's not, you're getting to a meeting of the minds, but you're not quite there. How do you kind of get into that communication where it's a positive, healthy conversation?
Yeah. I always like to go back to mindset. That's something that I'm always kind of harping on. So, because if you go into any type of conversation without the right mindset, we all know how they can sometimes end up, right? So I would say just beginning with that mindset, kind of like, you know, we were talking about earlier of we're stewards. You know, oftentimes we operate with like this mindset of like selfish owner pride, like mine, hers, like this is my stuff, your stuff, like, but no, like we're together in this, and the resources that we have, whether it's finances or whatever we have, that they're both ours, and that we don't technically own anything. We're responsible for stewarding it. And that, I feel like, it just helps create an a better ground, like a more easy ground, in order to have any kind of conversations when it comes to finances. So
well, and I mean, I would say just put time on the calendar, right? It shouldn't be oh, we're passing and I'm irritated about this, so let's discuss it now type of thing. If there's already some tension, we do try to do monthly budget meetings where we sit down and we look at, you know, the past month, what has that looked like? What are we projecting for the month ahead? How can we get on the same page about where to allocate these resources? And we know that that can feel not fun. It can feel frustrating to have to sit down and talk numbers. Some people have never really done that before, but offering grace in that time. So initially, maybe putting it on the calendar so that you can sit down and just talk, period. Maybe not even pull up spreadsheets, right? And then build to start looking beneath the hood. Where are you right now? And then build to actual goal setting. So there's a certain level of progression as you become more open and honest with each other that I think is part of the process. Gratefully, we were able proactively to like practice combining our incomes hypothetically during our engagement period. So we went ahead and like budgeted, and we're trying to project. So we started to build that habit early, and that's what we would encourage any couple to do. Don't necessarily go ahead and combine your incomes unless you're both on the same page about that. However, just assess like how are we able to talk through this, and where might there be areas that we can continue to grow. So,
and I thought of another good practical tip to add on to what you said. I think also setting helps in terms of where you have those discussions. So oftentimes or you know, you might have money discussions or budget discussion, and it's like, you know, at the table, kind of in a more serious tone or a serious setting. And sometimes that could turn people off depending on, you know, how each person's personality works. So maybe try, you know, creating and finding a new setting. Maybe go to your favorite coffee spot, or, you know, go to the beach, whatever you need to do to kind of help create a more, I guess, a lighter environment to have some of those conversations. Then I think that's another practical way that can maybe help with having some of those money conversations.
That's great, because I noticed with us, we used to do our money conversations were kind of really rushed. Okay, it's late, we're both tired, but we need to get this done. Sit down, let's do it. And we're both kind of irritated. But I noticed a few times we've done this, is we kind of did it, you know, at a different time. One time we actually had lunch in the backyard, you know, because when COVID, everything was closed. So we're like, well, this will be a lunch date in the backyard. Toddler was snapping. So we just had a little, and that actually, just that little sitting in the backyard with some sunshine on our faces, that changed the atmosphere of doing it. And I think if it's like you said, just setting that, if you can set the different mindset, like you said with mindset going into it, then you may not have to do that every time. But just if you're starting out, make it something where, okay, you know, this isn't so bad. Almost like retraining yourself, just like working out, retraining yourself. Okay, I can't, like you said, run a mile, but maybe I can just walk a few minutes around the block. My mile is going to be 15 minutes, but at least I'm starting. So I love that. Wow. Everything you guys said. Thank you so much. Everything, all those tips were just really rich. I'm going to use those tips. I say that every time, but I have to keep saying it because it's true. Those are really good marital advice, especially those for engaged couples. A lot of people don't talk about a lot with that too, is that engaged couples do need to start this out. Get these money conversations starting early so that when you get there, you kind of know what's happening. And we kind of started some of those early, but I think we definitely could have done even more. So for those that are engaged, that's a great thing to think of too. I'm going to make sure I link in the description all the ways to contact you guys, your website, Instagram. You guys also have a YouTube channel, and you guys give great marital advice, financial advice. So it's a plethora of a lot of different topics relating to couples and marriage, which is something I'm really passionate about as well. And also faith, because I'm also a person of faith. So I love how you guys put the scriptures and weave that into what you're doing as well. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much again, Francesca, and thanks for everything that you're doing for the community and for moms and just again couples as well out there. And we just we're grateful to be along with you on this journey. So
awesome. I hope you enjoyed the interview I had with Marriage Inside Out. They gave awesome tips on how to communicate as a couple. What a great way to celebrate Valentine's Day, to not only be able to work together and communicate on an area of finances, but to come together as a couple. That's something we all need. Follow me on Instagram at Francesca_Ariola00. Last but never least, happy savings!